The Surface Go just celebrated its first birthday. It's time to check in to see how this little device has held up. What's up everybody, Brad here back again, and it's hard to believe that Microsoft Surface Go is now a year old. It was in early August that the device was announced, and around the middle of the month that the device was released, and so I've been using this thing for a solid year, and it's time to talk about the pros, the neutrals, and the cons of this device a year after it has shipped. Now, before we dive into that, it's important to keep in mind what this device actually is for and who it's targeted at. It's targeted at first-line workers, light productivity. It is not a powerhouse solution. It is a tiny device. It is not your be-all, end-all, on the road, do-it-all machine. That being said, it very much has a purpose in the world, and we are going to talk about what is good, what is bad, and what's indifferent on the Surface Go. So let's roll that B-roll, and we will just walk through it. So before I start, this is the 128 gig model with 8 gigs of RAM, and you can still go out and buy it today from Microsoft.com and many other retailers. So we're going to start with the pros here. By far, my biggest feature that I love about the Pro is actually just the size of it. I think this size is perfect. I really like this as an ultra mobile style PC that used to be really popular several years ago. Microsoft is kind of reliving that with the Surface Go. It is a right size, and I also have an LTE model that I've toted around, and when that combination of the Go plus LTE makes it super convenient if you're out traveling on the road and you need to fire off some emails and do some light productivity where a phone just doesn't quite cut it. The Go really excels in that type of a scenario. It also runs one app really well, and someone is going to say, hey, what do you mean by that? It's run your apps full screen and just don't try to multitask with multiple side-by-side apps. In that scenario, it works really well. You can occasionally do a split screen, like a browser and a Word doc or a browser and email, and that's fine, but I would not be trying to have like PowerPoint and Excel and Word and other apps open at the same time. That being said, once you know what the device is for and know how to use it properly, it's a pretty good device. I really like the size of it. The size of it is what I keep coming back to because it's something you can just toss into a bag, and at around 1.5 pounds, you honestly can just forget that it is in your backpack. And at 1800 by 1200 screen resolution, it's at the right screen res for the device. I'm glad Microsoft didn't really crank it up because things would have just been too small and it probably would have been overkill and probably drained the battery even more than it needed to. And it's not too large of a pixel, or the pixel density is just right. It's not too large where you can actually see the pixels itself. So from a positive perspective, it's just a good small tablet. The right size, the right screen res, and everything else. Now, on the neutral side of the Surface Go style, if you will, or Surface Go tablet, is Windows 10. Now, when I did the 6-month checkup, one of the issues that I had was that when it went into hibernation mode, the battery would go flat really frequently. Now, I'm happy to report that I believe Microsoft has fixed this issue with the Surface Go. I have not had that issue happen too often, and I think that is resolved. So that's a good thing, but on the other side, the downside of the hardware is also a little bit of Windows 10 because Microsoft has really moved away from Windows 10 being a touch-centric OS, and it's really gone back to its roots of being mouse and keyboard. Now, that's not an entirely bad thing, but the reason I'm putting it as neutral is that you can't really use this device without a keyboard. You need to get the keyboard with the Surface Go. Using it in pure tablet mode isn't all that great. Tablet UI on Windows 10 is sort of like an afterthought at this point, and all of the UI does work with the touch. It's just not really designed, and you're missing some of those system-wide gestures that would really make using this as a pure touch experience exceptional on the same level as the iPad. So keep that in mind that you are going to be shelling out for a keyboard, and if you're not, you're going to be slightly disappointed with the experience. So keep that in mind. Other things, the keyboard, while you are going to be buying it, it is fine. It's just not great. Limited by the size, which I know this is a little bit ironic because I love the size, but the keyboard, if you're going to be writing a lot, like super long emails or like a dissertation or all that stuff, you're either going to want to buy the larger Surface Pro and you'll be super happy with that keyboard, or just get a Bluetooth keyboard to use with it. It's fine for short emails and all that stuff. The trackpad, again, is fine. Touch is responsive on the trackpad. It's just a little cramped, and you can certainly get used to it. Or if it's for a child and they have smaller hands, it's definitely going to be easier. But if you have large hands, the keyboard can present some issues. So just keep that in mind. The other sort of neutral, and this is kind of floats between neutral and negative, this has been a problem on all Surface devices, regardless of the make, if it's a Surface Book, if it's a Surface Pro or whatever, the power button is sometimes just doesn't work. And I can't quite figure out why this does it. And this has been representative on every Surface device that I've ever had, and I've had quite a few of them, that you go and press the power button, and then all of a sudden the device it's like it's frozen in an off state, and you press it again and nothing happens, and you think, oh, maybe the battery's flat, so you plug it in and wait a little bit, you press the button again and nothing happens. What you really have to do is do the hard reboot, and then the device is fine. And this is very infrequent, but it's just enough that it happens when you least expect it, and then all of a sudden you have to do a hard reboot, which again is like 30 seconds to a minute out of your day. Not the end of the world in any capacity, but it's just something to be aware of, and it definitely happens with the Surface Go. And now, on the negative side of the Surface Go, my biggest issue with this entire thing at this point in its life cycle, and there are other issues that we could talk about in depth, like a low CPU performance and other stuff, which we'll hit on, is honestly just the price. Microsoft is still selling the same device at the same price point as the day it launched, at $549 for this particular model of 128 gigabyte storage, 8 gigs of RAM with an Intel Pentium Gold processor. $549 without a keyboard is too much money a year after it has launched. That is my biggest issue with this device at this time. Now, and it's not even $549 with a keyboard. It's $549 without a keyboard. So you're looking at roughly at least 600, low 600s if you want to get this model today, 1 year after launch. In my opinion, this device should definitely be cut by at least $100. The entry-level price right now is $399 for a 4 gig version, 4 gig of RAM, which I can't truly humbly recommend, because that lack of RAM does really start to eat into some of the performance. So, and that device is $399. It should definitely be about $299 at this point in its life cycle. I would love for the version that I am holding in my hand right here to be $400. That would be a good price point for this device at its point in the life cycle. But here we are at $549. I hit on the CPU performance a little bit. If you're getting this device and you're expecting to play games on it, you will absolutely be devastated by the performance. If you're getting this device to browse the web, maybe write a couple documents in Word, very light PowerPoint usage, you will be happy. It is just fine for that low level, low productivity type workforce or tasks. It is definitely not anything more than that. It runs videos just fine. Don't be concerned about that. Just keep in mind that the performance is what it is, and it's not going to get better with some magical upgrades and all that stuff. The other thing on the negative side is that I do wish, this is really weird, I do wish that the speakers were a little bit better for this device, but take that with a grain of salt. It's a small device. They're not going to be great. They're just super, abnormally tinny at this point. But on the other hand, look at this thing. It's just nice. I think that is the best way to describe the Surface Go. It is just nice. Now, what would I do, or what do I want to see in the next generation Surface Go, which I hope Microsoft does make? There's two things that I would be super interested to see. One would be, I'd love to see this thing with an ARM processor. Considering how low performant the Intel Pentium processor is, I would bet that a Qualcomm 8CX would give this thing a serious run for money on the performance side. Not to mention, with the 8CX, you would get built-in LTE connectivity, so you wouldn't have to worry about buying one or the other devices. If you don't want to pay more, you guys know what I mean. The other interesting thing is, if they're not going to do an 8CX, I would love to see something like a Core i3 tossed in here. Or my dream device would be this thing, but with Surface Pro guts, right? You throw like an i7 in there, 16 gigs of RAM, because I really like this form factor. Yes, I know it's not perfect for everybody, because, and I didn't really include this in the negatives because this is a given with the hardware. Smaller size means your legs have to be a little bit closer together to use it on your legs. Well, no kidding. But for me, my primary use case was on the back of an airplane, like traveling in economy. I'm not flying first class by any means. You just throw the little kickstand out, put it right there on the tray table in front of you, and it's great. Now, if I could get the super high level performance of like a Core i7 or something along those lines, this thing would be super interesting to me and potentially replace the Surface Pro that I travel with quite frequently. So Microsoft, I think you have something nice here. They did sell, I think, quite a bit of these. I heard that one client, I think, bought 40,000 of these things over. It's going to be a multi-year purchase, I believe. But it's not like Microsoft, this thing was a complete dud for the company. So I hope Microsoft continues the Surface Go line. I hope that they continue this size because I really do like the size. I would love for some increased performance, but realistically, I would love for a Qualcomm 8CX. I think that would be a wonderful chip for this device. But folks, after a year of using the Surface Go, should you buy one? At its retail price of $549, that to me is very hard to say go out and buy this thing because it is a year old. It's late in its life cycle. If you can get it on sale at a good price point, around $400, even $400 with a keyboard, I think that's a very smart decision if you know what you are going to be using for, especially for a kid. Like if your kid just needs something to go browse YouTube with, you could do a lot worse than this thing. This thing would be quite the task for that. So that's it for the Surface Go, folks. It has been out for a year now. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time here on another Surface review.